Okay, I have worked in the perimenopause, menopause space for quite a few years now. And while I started my journey to learn more and more to help myself and to figure out the things that I knew I didn't know, I came across Shirley Weir and the Menopause Chicks. And Shirley has been a leader in this conversation for over a decade. And while I love that we see so many celebrities talking openly about hot flashes and menopause and the whole experience and coming to market with information products, I love, love, love that because the more we can talk about this, the more women are going to feel comfortable asking questions. But the real trailblazers, to me, are women like Shirley who cracked open this conversation before it was even comfortable to talk about. Shirley started talking about menopause and learning about it and sharing her knowledge when menopause was very taboo, and she did it on her own dime and she took a chance. I mean, I know myself that sometimes talking about menopause when I first started talking about it made me feel a little bit ostracized. But today, seeing, her tenacity to keep moving forward with this conversation has been so inspiring to me. And so I've asked Shirley to join me today because she gets a wealth of information, but she gets a ton of questions, mostly from me, I feel like. And today I've asked her to share her most popular questions and what she has to say about them. And as someone who's been reading and listening and doing videos about this, even I was surprised by some of her answers. Good morning, Shirley, live from British Columbia.
Good morning, Jackie. Nice to see you.
Yes, you too, Shirley. You and I met a few years ago. I've been stalking you online for a very long time, and you've been putting up with my questions, text messages, emails, phone calls, Zoom calls for well over a year now. So I am so excited to have you join me in this episode.
Thank you. Love it.
So, as you know, my role with She 2.0 is I am not an expert on anything other than my lived experience with my own journey, but I am a curator. I love to bring the information to women, and I hear a lot of questions that really resonate with me and mimic my own concerns. But I have to turn to experts for the answers. Now, you've got a huge community. You've been helping women for well over a decade navigate this kind of confusing journey, and you hear a lot of things. So, what are you going to tell me today?
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting because over the holidays, I was thinking about how could I put like these categories of questions into buckets, if you will. Like, what are the themes? And because I'm looking at my whiteboard right now, it continues to be sort of this very exhausting list. And that's really rooted in the fact that 77% of women have questions about their health. And just had the really, really good fortune of, I think, starting this mission in a time where there just was nothing, no place, no quality access for women who are curious and want that verification, like, is what I'm thinking true? If what, is the way my mother talked about this, is that my journey, right? So those things don't always come forward in the form of a like hard and fast question, but I always like to start with the root cause, as you know, and I think that like a lot of history, a lot of lack of quality information and access to care has brought us here. Now, what do women ask about? Well, it's really interesting. I mean, I love to teach the roles and responsibilities of our hormones when cycles are regular so that we have sort of that baseline information. But rarely does anybody come to me and say, "Hey, Shirley, what's the role of progesterone?" Like nobody asks questions like that. The most often are going to be like, why am I bleeding for 40 days in a row and what can I do about it? Like
Yeah.
it's very tactical. It's very it hones right in on the life disruption. I haven't slept well for 12 years. Like these are big impact statements. And that's usually what comes to me. We do a little bit of peeling back the layers of the onion and then find, hopefully, the shortest distance between 2 points for that individual to prioritize her health.
Well, that's the thing, right? We don't know what we don't know. So, like, I would never, in the beginning of this whole journey, come to you and said, "Hey, I think I'm low on progesterone or
Yeah.
testosterone," because
Yeah.
I'm not even going to lie. Before I went into postmenopause, I didn't really know I had a pelvic floor, what it did, and I certainly did not know I had testosterone.
Yeah.
So, and like many women in my situation, go to our doctors and say, "Hey, I'm just learning about the role of testosterone, and I think I'd like me some." And my doctor said, "Well, do you want a mustache?" I'm like, "I have a mustache." So, so we're getting, just as we're learning, we're getting good information from you. And, there's some great experts out there, but then our doctors are kind of like negating that information. It makes it a very confusing climate.
Yeah, I have a couple things to respond to that with, and it's sometimes what I have to say can be hard to swallow. We have to get rid of the notion that our doctors are responsible for our health education.
Hmm.
They are not. When our children are navigating puberty, we don't say, "Oh, time to go to the doctor. Your doctor's going to teach you everything about how your body's going to change." We don't do that. We actually take that on as parents, hopefully, with, maybe some support from the community, from the school system, etc. But we forget when it comes to our own health that we too are responsible for that learning and that education.
That's a
Um,
really good point.
doesn't make it any easier. I think that where we're kind of sitting right now, it's 2025. It's still, there's a lot of information, but finding the quality education still might be a bit of a challenge. But
Yeah.
we have to let go of the notion that our doctors are responsible for teaching us. They are not. They have taken an oath to treat us, to treat symptoms, to treat ailments and conditions and diseases. That's what they learn in medical school. Yes, there's lots of gaps when it comes to the women's reproductive health curriculum, but together we can move this forward. I think, we show up differently at our health appointments so that we can help our doctors be the best team member for us. They're not
Right.
the captain of our health team. They're like the goalie or the center person or whatever, like whatever they're a key player. They got the
Hmm.
on, they're ready to play, but you are the captain.
Yeah. And this is where, okay, so I have a few things to say about this. This is where I think you are critical in this whole process because 100% they're not there to educate us, but they are not there to dismiss us. And
Right.
that's a big concern. I've had my own experiences where I kind of got shut down. It is what it is. You're at that age. You don't need this. I just spoke with a friend over the weekend who works in the healthcare industry, and she had been going to a healthcare practitioner who told her, and this woman is in her late 40s, told her that perimenopause is a myth, and um, pelvic floor therapy is just a scam. And I was like, oh, see, this is where I have a problem.
Yeah.
It's hard to champion for your own health care needs when you don't know what you need and you don't know if what you're asking for is even correct. So that's
Yeah.
where, like, I love following your community. You give women, and you've given me scripts on how to talk to my doctor, how to help them help me.
Yeah.
But I consider myself very privileged because of what I do to have access to that information. Now, I mean, women can get it in your community for free. But again, it's like you said, women don't know where to go to get the initial information. And some women don't even know that there is information that they can have to make this journey easier. They feel like, oh, this is the hand I'm dealt.
Yeah.
As you and I have talked about many times. I mean, let's like forget the fact that we're white privileged women, our socioeconomic factors, our ethnicity, our skin color, so many things give us like the potential to have access to that information that many, 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 many women don't have.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's something that guides a lot of my work on a daily basis. And that is that over half of women leave their health appointments feeling dismissed or disappointed. And so I can't influence primary care providers. I just don't have access to them.
Yeah.
I can influence individuals who want to change how they show up for that health appointment to minimize the risk of leaving feeling dismissed or disappointed. And there's a lot of different factors that go into that. As you were speaking there, I was just kind of reminded of the fact that doctors are human beings and human beings are flawed. And so that dismissal, that fact that, perimenopause is a myth or whatever, like the incorrect information that someone might get from a healthcare professional, gosh, I hope that that is like the 80/20 rule. Like, I hope
Yeah.
80% of patients are giving good, sound, quality. I feel that they are
Mhm.
advice and support. And we still have this smaller cohort of physicians that need to be reminded, educated, step up to the occasion that, half of the population is female. And at some point, we will need support from our healthcare provider. But there was something else that popped into my head as you were speaking too, and that was like, I thought about this when I saw you last. I was on an airplane and I was like thinking about the pilot of the airplane, who is just as much a professional, a trained professional as our doctor. But yet, I never hear a pilot like come over the loudspeaker and say, "We're doing great, folks. Everything is, smooth sailing." The only thing is that I didn't study how to land the plane at pilot school. Like, I learned how to take off and I learned how to, get us there safely, but I didn't take this information. And it's like, if we compare that to our doctors who are like, I just want a physician to say to someone, this is not in my wheelhouse. I
Yeah.
haven't learned this. I can't help you with this. And that it for me is the opposite of saying something dismissive.
Exactly. Well, because to me, that's like an opportunity for them to triage you to someone, an endocrinologist or whatever, right?
Learn themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I think that's what we need is someone not to necessarily answer our questions or solve the problem from our healthcare practitioner. And my doctor has been great. She's really like learning about it. She's going to go through it too, right? And we're kind of on this journey together now. In the beginning, I felt like we were combative,
Mhm.
and I think we've come a long way. Like I love walking in and talking to her now, but she's learning, where she might send someone or what might be a next step here. However she goes on that journey, it's great. At least she's, trying. She's putting the effort in to say, like you said, I don't have this information, but I'm not going to just hang you out to dry. I'm going to help you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not a huge fan of referring women on to the specialist part. We both live in Canada, so specialists are not easy to access. Often there's a long wait, and we need our specialists to treat the special situation,
Yes.
right? The
Yeah.
cancers and the surgeries and all of that that's required. Most of the time, women navigating their menopause, post-menopause care can be treated by their primary healthcare provider, their nurse practitioner, or their family doctor. If there's a gap in education and information, part of that gap can be filled by the individual
Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah. I
And
agree with that.
and understanding the tools that your family doctor has in his or her toolkit. And if you have a good understanding about that and you've got, a little bit of education and some script tips for how to, ask for the care that you deserve, it can be magical.
Yes, absolutely. Because like you said, it puts you in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
right? You have a better knowledge of what's happening. And I think we need to be, my daughter's 13. She's had her period since she was 10. Like I talked to her about hormones and try to touch her on a 10-year-old level, but I can't. But, we should be teaching this stuff as soon as we can, not when it's not too late, but we're starting to lose these hormones and wondering what the hell is happening to us. Like if we always knew, we could maybe have managed the process a little better.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power. So, yeah. So based on that, you get a ton of questions. I
Yes.
probably provide you with 80% of those questions. Thank you for not blocking me. Um, I know you've got a lot of categories, you've got a lot of questions. I'm sure you see a lot of the same questions over and over. If you had to pick your top 5 questions that you get asked, okay, top 20. What are the top? I won't limit it to 5 or make it 5, but what would you say you still hear are the critical questions that we are still asking?
There's been a little bit of a theme lately with, I mean, hormone therapy is always a large category and umbrella, but I've noticed lately underneath that umbrella of hormone therapy, I'm meeting a lot of women who are 60 plus who have questions and they need to sort out, like, do they have options available to them? If so, what are they? And really getting clarity around systemic hormone therapy versus vaginal hormone therapy. Systemic hormone therapy does have guidelines, big underline underneath that, for when we should start hormone therapy, when it will have the most benefit to us in terms of preventing bone loss, for example. So, guidelines. Vaginal hormone therapy does not have guidelines. And it is those women who are now north of 60 who absolutely need a protocol, a plan in place to prioritize their genitourinary health, which includes vulva, vagina, urethra, bladder, overall pelvic floor. Another theme at the other end, before menopause, it's come up a couple of times this week, is individuals navigating heavy bleeding.
Yeah.
And it's so prominent,
Yes.
the perimenopause experience. And I suspect it is one of the reasons a lot of women get dismissed in a health appointment, for legitimate reasons. In some ways, not all of us can articulate what heavy bleeding is. I only
True.
knew my period, right? I didn't know if it was heavy. I could guess, yeah, it was pretty normal. It wasn't like life disruptive. 3, 4, or 5 days max, good. But we have so many colleagues in our age group, I think, who experience heavy bleeding. They can't make it through the night.
Yeah.
They're bleeding for extended, like 2 weeks at a time. I had one story, Jackie. I had a woman who drove for a living, and
Oh,
she had actually moved the rubber floor mats from her car up onto the seat
that's
because
horrible.
it's horrible, horrible, because she had bled through the car upholstery like on a number of occasions and she wasn't getting the help that needed. She's good now. We, kind of found her way, but like she knew that that was heavy bleeding. Like it's
Yeah.
life. And the reason that I use that extreme example is because, we really need to illustrate for others, whether we're at the backyard barbecue and for care providers, that this is impacting quality of life. This
Yeah.
ability to do her job is impacted. So that's super important. Other categories of
Oh, can
questions.
I just interrupt there? Um, you and I have talked in the past a lot about how companies can support employees, right? So I was doing some research for a project and I learned about a company in the UK who took their like assembly line workers, and there's a lot of women, and they had white uniforms. And to support these women, they changed the uniforms all to navy. Like, just a little thing like that to help them not feel so exposed if there's an accident or, like even the tennis skirts we see in professional sports, all white. Like it's just that peace of mind knowing if you have an accident or a bleed or something, it's just when it's white, it's so obvious.
I'm sorry, I just made my face, my
I
face,
know
but
your face.
absolutely. Absolutely right. Because if we think about navigating perimenopause, the only thing that's predictable is how unpredictable your period is likely going to
Yep.
be at some point. So that's, definitely a step in in the right direction. And I would say the next step in the right direction would be making sure that they understand, the implications of irregular bleeding and especially heavy bleeding. And I think
Mhm.
place like I'm trying to shout from the rafters right now with workplaces about the importance of iron deficiency.
Yes.
If you just have a regular period and maybe you eat primarily vegetarian, maybe not, you are likely iron deficient. And that often shows up as fatigue and exhaustion and hair loss. And so we got to get the word out because what if we could course correct? Sure, take care of the uniforms, I'm all for it. But what if we could course correct the fatigue and the exhaustion
Yes.
women feel? And maybe that is also another root cause of dismissal, because it's just part of being a woman. We've been fed this line that it's just being tired comes with the territory, and it's
Yeah.
actually not true or right.
No, absolutely. And it's funny because I do hear that a lot from friends and family members, like their periods are like a murder scene now, and they also can't understand why they're so tired. As someone who had anemia in my teen years, when I had very heavy periods in the beginning, and I always believed there was a correlation because I was getting super heavy periods more than my girlfriends seemed to be getting, and I had anemia. So yeah, so that is definitely, and the hair loss thing was a surprise to me. You were the first person to tell me that.
Mhm. Yeah. I think the hair loss thing is interesting because first of all, it gets dismissed because it's a beauty feature, right?
Yes. Yep.
I don't believe that to be true, but that's how it gets portrayed in society.
Yep.
I look at hair loss as a health factor. It's an indicator. It's your body telling you something's up and that it needs something. And then we need to decide, is it iron deficiency? Is it a thyroid condition? Is it something else? Is there an
Yes.
cause?
Yep.
My gosh, so many things I wanted to say there. I just
I know we should have scheduled this for 20 hours, but
right. No, that's good.
more questions that you have.
Okay, so over 60, heavy bleeding. Oh, definitely. I mean, I can't have this conversation without talking about sleep.
Yes. Yes. The number one issue.
It's so complex and
Yeah.
it's so prevalent. In the Menopause Chicks community, I've done two pieces of research with my members. We're working really hard to elevate the conversation around insomnia.
Hmm.
And I have learned so much because sleep is probably what got me this job 12 years ago, or
Yeah.
lack of sleep, I mean.
Yeah.
You know, and thinking that I should be able to figure it out on my own, right? Keeping sleep on the back burner and just pushing through all my roles and responsibilities. And I'm not special. I think that that is like every woman who's walking the planet. But
Hmm.
I never, it was 10 years before I fully understood what the definition of insomnia is, how it's a chronic disorder, and we need to be asking for help because
Yeah.
when we solve sleep, we are in a much better position to take care of all the other things.
Absolutely. And you know what? A lot of the times, like I've had bouts of sleeplessness, like I've had terrible sleep, but I've had, and I think I've told you this before, in the summer and then in the fall, 3 nights in a row where I couldn't sleep at all. I couldn't nap. I was aware all night that I wasn't sleeping. And by the third day, I was gobsmacked. Like I couldn't think straight. I couldn't function. And I did end up by taking a sleeping pill, which I have never done, didn't want to do. But I wouldn't define that as insomnia because I know insomnia, like you said, is chronic, is something that like I have bouts of sleeplessness. Um, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. And then I have nights where I do fall asleep, but I wake up a lot. But I would say insomnia to me feels like something different and
Yeah. Well,
probably something that you need to look at. We need to look at differently. Like there's probably a different outcome for that. Am I
and
right?
we need to make sure everyone understands the definition of insomnia, which
Yeah.
is not one bad night of sleep or one disruptive night. It
Yeah.
is anytime any of these four things are present: difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, waking too early, or, and this is the biggie, anytime your lack of sleep negatively impacts your quality of life the following day. So
Oh,
that could include inability to go to work. It could be inability to care for your aging parents, inability to have delightful conversations with the people that you actually love. And then the overriding thread through those four things is that when that happens 3 or more times a week.
ah, okay.
So insomnia is something that you is self-diagnosed. You don't
Okay.
go to the doctor to get a diagnosis for insomnia. You diagnose it yourself. I think that's a huge paradigm shift. And again, I think that in North America for sure, and probably other parts of the world now as well, sleep debt is costing us greatly. Like there have been studies over the last couple of years, new studies around menopause, and we're now learning, that untreated symptoms are costing here in Canada, costing the economy like $3.5 billion a year, right? So those headlines they're there, they're getting attention. Sleep debt is
Mm,
costing us the same or more, and it's influencing, well, I already mentioned relationships, but like traffic accidents, it's in like
yeah.
touches
So
every.
imagine like you're a woman who works in transportation, like you
Yeah,
said, that you drive a truck,
yeah,
right? And you've got the heavy bleeding, and you have maybe you have anemia and you have insomnia. Oh my God. What,
yeah.
like, that's the perfect storm.
It would be a tragedy if that person wasn't getting the support that she needs from her healthcare provider. And insomnia, so if you're, meet the definition of insomnia, has recommended approved treatments. So there's things that we can do to prioritize our sleep health,
Hmm.
right? So
Yep.
those include, paying attention to how we eat and how we exercise and manage stress, and asking ourselves if we're magnesium deficient, right? Magnesium is not a treatment for sleep, it's a treatment for magnesium deficiency.
Yeah.
And then obviously learning about our hormones and understanding that when progesterone is regular, when our cycles are regular, progesterone supports our sleep. So we might be missing that depending on how old we are and what stage we're at. But on the other side is that diagnosis of insomnia and the approved treatments are cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. So CBT is probably an acronym that you've seen.
Mhm.
It's CBT-I is cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia.
Okay.
And there are pharmaceutical sleep aids that have been recently introduced to the market that have been tested on women, because historically sleep
What?
was not tested on women. Shocking. And they are proven to treat the part of the brain. Now, this is an area that's not my wheelhouse. I'll admit that right off the start, but it does not cause that next day hangover feeling
Okay.
that so many people are afraid to get a sleep support, when in reality, it's going to support their sleep so that they can then function.
Okay, so the other concern I have about sleep aids, like I take dream water. I take cannabis gel tablets sometimes, a lot of times actually, but not like I have to separate them because otherwise it can lead to, for me, some depression. But those are the nights I get the best sleep. Dream water helps me, but sometimes I wake up, it's magnesium, it's melatonin, and something else. But my doctor, after my sleep study, said, I'm going to put you on a sleeping aid, which was a benzo. And those are highly addictive. And I know that one of the reasons women are really reticent to use a pharmaceutical sleep aid is because they don't want to become addicted. And I
You want
desperately took it.
you want to take a sleep aid that's
Yes.
designed to treat insomnia,
So
not
that is where we have to differentiate.
not an antidepressant, not a
Yeah.
gabapentin, a category that might have sleep side effects, because that is like that's off-label prescribing.
Yeah.
Talk to your physician about approved treatments for insomnia.
Amazing. Okay, that's a game changer. That one I didn't know. And I want to like make sure everybody knows that because it is I'm sure it's the number one question you get. It's the number one thing I hear. Like if I hear one more time, I don't think I'm in perimenopause, but I keep waking up at 3 a.m. and I can't go back to sleep. I'm like, it's such a critical issue. Add
Yeah,
stress, add stress. Like, so think about women our age who aren't sleeping. And then you add in, like, oh crap, I'm going to be a mess tomorrow. I'm already a target for discrimination because I'm of that age. And so, you know, all the rise of menopause in the media has been great, great support, but also, you know, it's kind of highlighting some of the negative things. And I don't want my manager, or my boss, or my colleagues going, oh, I've been reading about this. She's going to have brain fog. She's going to drop the ball. She might not be fit for that promotion. And then on top of it, I'm not going to get a good night's sleep. And I'm going to be so stressed out of what that lack of sleep is going to do to me the next day to compound the ongoing issue I already think I have. So then I'm really not going to sleep because now I'm stressed right out.
it's definitely it's complex and it's a social construct. I love to talk about sleep because it impacts all ages and all genders. Um,
Hmm.
and I hope we've come a long way over the last decade or so in terms of reshaping the lens that we look at mental health or certain mental illnesses. And I hope that we can learn from that and bring a similar lens to how we approach sleep and sleep debt.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy and it is complex. And we're also working sort of in a culture that almost reveres lack of sleep. Like
Yeah, it's a badge of honor to be exhausted.
the badge of honor. So
Yeah.
let's break that down for just half a second if we can. One is, we live in like the 24/7 hyper culture. Two is, I remember younger, and someone saying to me, entrepreneurs only need 4 hours of sleep, right? And I was like, oh,
Because
well, I'm
why?
an entrepreneur, I guess, right? So that probably fed into my psyche. But three, if you, and I'm going to bring this back to script tips, if you go to see your doctor and you show up and you say something like, used to be a good sleeper, but now I'm waking up every day at 3 a.m. Your doctor was educated and trained in an environment that reveres sleep deprivation. If they did a residency or an ER where they worked 48 hours, straight without sleeping, they might not be able to interpret what that means for Jackie.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is helping members prepare for their doctor's appointments and write script tips. So the big
Yes.
difference between I'm just not sleeping the way I used to, that could lead to dismissal,
Yep.
and saying, I used to be a good sleeper, but now I'm finding I have difficulty falling asleep. It's affecting how much time I am asleep, and it's impacting my ability to be productive at work the next day. You know, I drive for a living, right? I believe that I have insomnia, and I'm here today to invite you to help me work through what would be the best treatment options for me. Right now, your doctor is like, oh, I've heard the problem, but I also heard the impact that it's having on her quality of life. We've
Really
got a
good
problem
point.
to fix, and I took an oath to fix problems. Now you've got a team working on that with you.
Yeah, that is so smart. Okay, do you have one more big question?
Well, I don't know. Can we talk about vaginal health?
Oh God, yeah. I feel
Right?
like that's all we talk about when we
Yeah, I
meet.
know. I mean, isn't it ironic that when I started this work, when we both started this work, I did not know like that I would be talking about vulva and vaginal health. That's how, glaring the gap was in my lack of education.
Yeah.
I started this thinking I'm just going to talk about sleep and mood changes and waving goodbye to our periods and having a celebration when that's over, not realizing that when estrogen declines post-menopause, we are all going to experience changes to our genitourinary health. So,
Yes.
yeah. And I don't know if this is a question I get, but it's the gap in understanding.
Yeah.
I have one camp who comes to me and they're like, I can't believe this is happening. I need help right away. Where's the path towards solutions, whether that's a vaginal moisturizer, working with a pelvic floor physiotherapist, or talking to your doctor about vaginal hormone therapy. And then I have this other camp of individuals who are like, I'm good. No, I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm not there yet. And I think if we know that something is going to happen,
Yep.
wouldn't you rather be on team prevention?
Yes. Preparation, like prepare to
Preparation.
fail and fail to prepare. I don't remember how that is. I use it on my husband all the time. But it's it is like I always think of perimenopause as the runway to menopause. This is
Yeah.
when you're going to be like, holy hell, what is happening? I'm going to sort it all out and I'm going to course correct and optimize my health. So it's a tricky time, like you and I have talked about many times. It's when things could be happening, could not be happening. You're like, is this happening? Am
Yeah.
I? But we're like the person watching the movie where the girl goes down to the cellar in the dark and we're like, don't do it. Like take the information, start, you probably get this question too about hormone therapy.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of women say, well, I'm not going to take it because I still get my period.
Mm.
And like I think you've probably heard that a million times. A lot of women are like, well, I still get my period, so I'm all good.
Yeah. Yeah. And they might want to wait until they reach menopause or they go 12
Hmm.
consecutive months period free, but it's never too early to get curious and
Hmm.
never too late to ask for support. And I think I mean, obviously, I want the world to be on team prevention, but I also want everyone who's listening to this to understand,
Yeah.
hey, it's life. We're humans. It's never too early and it's never too late. I was on a call last night where somebody said, and this is probably wasn't posed in the form of a question either, but she's like, oh, I don't need my she probably didn't say that either. My genital urinary health is fine. I eat right. I exercise. I sleep well. I'm good. And I had to remind her that there isn't enough broccoli in the world that will prevent vulva and vaginal dryness from
No.
happening,
No.
right? So we have to understand hyaluronic acid started to decline back in our 30s or 40s, and estrogen is going to go for that steep decline post menopause. You might not feel vaginal dryness, 1 year or 2 years or even 5 years. But if you plan to live 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years post menopause, you will experience it.
And I hope we do. Well, that's a funny thing. Like, it's such a it's such a catch-22 vaginal dryness because I think of my own situation, right? So I had my daughter later in life. Perimenopause wasn't spoken about, even
Yeah.
that recently. She's only 13. And when things were happening to me, it really just was under the guise of I was a new mom, I was nursing, like all the things, right? And then all that went away. I wasn't a new mom anymore. I wasn't nursing. And then all these issues were carrying on. And, I was still in the new mom group stuff. Like, what is this nonsense? And then it wasn't until I was postmenopause that I learned about perimenopause. And
Oh,
yeah, isn't that crazy? And I went into early postmenopause and I hear that a lot too. Well, so did my mom and so did my grandma. And like, I'm not sure those are always indicators, but I would say the concern I have about dryness is letting the problem go too long, as what happened to me, as you know. I went years without knowing it was an issue, and then I had atrophy. So if you are exhausted and you are in a marriage or you're single and your libido tanks and you're not having sex and you're not doing self-pleasure internally, and pap smears are every 3 years now. So the first time that speculum went in, I almost shot off the bed. I was like, what in the holy hell is that thing? Are we digging the Ontario line down there? And that's when I realized. And she was like, oh my gosh, you have atrophy. Like, no wonder this hurts. And then at the time, before I met you, I was told surgery was the only answer, and I could not afford it. Surgery. So since then, so
nice.
this is the problem. Like, when you say you have an audience of women 60 plus who are having issues, when they were in their 50s,
Yeah.
early 50s, this information really wasn't transparent. Like, you were one of the only people out there I ever found talking about it. So, and the other thing is too, women don't know what they don't know. So if they're in peri, they're not going to go to a website about perimenopause because they don't know what it is and their doctor's not talking about it. And they're certainly not looking for menopause if they feel like they're still getting their period. So how the hell, like, I'm so glad to see it all over the place now. Because now everyone's aware of it. You can't get away from it now, but that was the case even 13 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I don't know how we do this, but we need to ignite a culture of curiosity.
Yeah.
And if you think back to how curious you were, you said your daughter got her period at 10. I was 12 when I got my period, but I can remember being a very curious 10-year-old, right? So it's like you're just getting into that book that your mom gave you or whatever, and you're so curious about what is going to happen. Now, I look back on that experience, and it was all about the period. No
Yeah.
one ever taught me about ovulation, which is the real
No.
reason that we're having this conversation. The period is just it happens to be a temperature gauge of what happened already, which is hormones sending signals to your ovaries,
Yes.
regular cycle, and performing all of these roles and responsibilities. And we haven't yet ignited that culture of curiosity. Even to this day, yes, menopause is on every channel, every cover of everything right now, and that can be a good thing. But we're still kind of talking about, do I have a period or don't I? And we're missing that piece that says, oh, estrogen is my juicy hormone. It's responsible for keeping things lubricated, my eyes, my mouth, my joints, my vagina. Progesterone, oh, it's the hormone that's responsible for my mood and my sleep. No wonder I'm feeling, no wonder I'm missing those things.
Yeah.
So,
And can you just touch on testosterone because that's a
sure.
big one right now. So many people are being told by their doctors you don't need it. It's bad for you. What does it do and why do we need it?
How many times have I used the word complex in this conversation?
Not enough.
Testosterone is complex. Here's the 411 on complex, or sorry, on testosterone. It is often misunderstood that testosterone is made in the ovaries, and everyone, including some healthcare professionals, think that it is only a male hormone. It is not.
Yes.
Have testosterone too. Second common misunderstanding is that testosterone, its only job is sexual function, sexual desire. That is not true. And your tidbit of the day is that testosterone is the hormone that is in part responsible for our confidence. So when I teach the Menopause Chicks masterclass, I always put up like this, Wonder Woman image for testosterone, because if you think about an older woman that you might know, who maybe, like, this happened to my mom, so it's at the top of my memory. She lost her confidence as
God,
she
yes.
to a point at one point. And I'm not saying this is all testosterone, but it made me curious as to whether it was. No longer interested in opening the mail, no longer interested in doing the things that she used to just used to be a part of who she was, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, so interesting.
My
Okay.
mom won't even try a new dish. She won't try a new recipe anymore. Like she says, "Oh, I'm tired." I'm like, "No, you used to cook all the time. You've lost your confidence that you can do new things. You can do the things you've always done." I totally get that. I see that all the time.
Now let's go into the space of testosterone therapy. So testosterone hormone therapy is available in North America, but it is not approved for women yet. Yet.
Okay.
And you and I will live long enough to see it be approved. I'm fairly confident about that. The International Menopause Society has written a white paper on testosterone therapy. We're following that. We're following a lot of the practitioners who are prescribing it. So when it is prescribed to a woman in North America, it is done so under what is called off-label prescribing.
Okay.
So off-label prescribing would be an example of the birth control pill for acne. That's off-label prescribing.
Right. Zyban for
Antidepressant for
quitting smoking.
prescription,
Yeah.
that's off-label prescribing. Testosterone can be prescribed. I can't talk about doses because I'm not a prescriber, but you need to know you are not getting the male dose of testosterone. Women need about, I think it's 1/5 of the dose. So you have to work with a practitioner who has the education, the experience, and the expertise to do that.
Okay.
I'm a little I'm both excited about the future of testosterone therapy being part of the package. I'm a little concerned right now, this year, and that's because testosterone is showing up on social media
Yes.
in a way that could send a lot of women to their healthcare providers for yet more dismissal and disappointment. And more conversation about testosterone is not helping us deliver the hormone therapy to the women, the estrogen and the progesterone and the vaginal estrogen and hormone therapy that women need right now. Like there's such a gap, and we can't fill it with this, not yet to be approved testosterone therapy. It's going to end up in frustration and disappointment. And I don't think it's a direct linear path for us. But I want women to know that the roles and responsibilities of testosterone when their cycles are regular. And I want them to know that if they have a healthcare professional, that it can be prescribed in an off-label format.
Okay. So I have two questions to add to your plate before we go, and you might already have the answer because you've probably heard it a billion times. One, is there a blood test to tell you that you are in peri or postmenopause? I mean, I'm going to take postmenopause off the table. If you haven't had your period in a year, you're postmenopausal. A lot of women believe and have been told that there is blood work you can do, and they're getting dismissed as not perimenopausal because the blood work is showing normal levels.
So there is blood work that can test FSH, which stands for follicle stimulating hormone. So it measures the hormone that basically says, are your ovaries going to mature another egg follicle?
Mm-hmm.
It can be a guide. It can also be misleading. There are other factors that are going to go into that. And I had a member on my Ask Anything call last night ask this very same question. And I had to come back to her with two other questions. One, why do you want to know?
That's a good question. I would guess so they can like understand what's happening.
Unless, no,
Right?
unless,
Nope.
nope, nope, nope. Unless you're making decisions about stopping contraception,
Yeah.
really don't need to know. And the reason is that that blood test is not going to be directive for your care.
Hmm.
Your care provider can look at your age, your date of your last period, and your symptoms and quickly earmark where you are on your journey.
Okay.
So I'm 48. My last period was 6 weeks ago. I'm in perimenopause, right? I'm 57. My last period was in 2016. I'm in postmenopause. The
Yeah.
difference between those two people, one is her progesterone has started to decline and her estrogen is probably still fluctuating. That would be a guess that would be made based on her symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
symptoms are mood swings, and progesterone is responsible for mood, and she's 48 in perimenopause. Like that's, you can wrap that up in a bow. For someone who's 57 who hasn't had a period in, 8 years or whatever, and has vulva and vaginal dryness, like it's a no-brainer what needs to be done. She doesn't need a blood test.
Exactly. And I like to say the simplest test to know is if you ran home on Wednesday nights in the 70s to watch the original Charlie's Angels, you are in perimenopause. You are that age.
Uh, well, that would be me, and you might be in postmenopause,
Well, you
actually.
could be post, but you're definitely peri. Okay, and
Yeah.
my real last question is, and this is not a simple answer. Um, okay, so if I'm a woman and I'm trying to figure out I want to know more about testosterone, can I get it? Where can I get it? How can I get it? Or estrogen or hormone therapy, and it's maybe not my healthcare practitioner. What is my first course of action?
Your doctor is probably not the first door you want to knock on. Or maybe you want to make an appointment, but then 2 weeks later, when, between that timeline, you make the appointment and you show up for the appointment, you're going to invest in quality information and education. Whether you like to read, watch videos, attend an hour class, that is what Menopause Chicks does. And then ask questions, be curious. And I would, if you really want this to work out in the best possible health outcome, I would prepare a script. You don't have to memorize it, you don't have to follow it to a T, but you do need to spend just a few minutes getting ready for that conversation. And that includes articulating the data because remember, doctors are scientists, they love data. I'm here today to talk about insomnia. That you'll remember, I'm 57. My last period was in 2016. Insomnia is now impacting my quality of life. Don't forget those key descriptors in telling your health story. And finally, wrap it up by saying, and I'm here because I want to invite you to help me figure out what the best path forward is for me.
Well, I think the best path forward for everybody is to start with menopausechicks.com. Shirley, you've given us so much to think about. So many did you knows. There's so many nuggets of information in this. And if anyone wants to start their journey before going to their doctor, I highly recommend going to your site, your book, feel amazing. Women can ask you anything on your weekly calls. Like you are a wealth of information. Your feedback and your answers are always easy to understand and easy to act on. So thank you so much for your time, Shirley.
Thank you.